There it is.
Get it. Good, you got like 30 seconds to get it over.
Yeah, right here. Place like this, and then I went into our student. That's the best it is.
Okay. Can I steal this for this? You're so organized. You're so organized. I like it. All right, here we go. All right. Go ahead and call to order the USD 49 Board of Education meeting for Monday, September 24th. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second motion.
It's been moved by Board Member Bickle, second by Board Member Adams. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. Next on the list is audience participation. Anybody have anything? All right, moving on. Moving on. They're all here for the awards, so. All right, next we'll go on to the Best of the Best awards. The Best of the Best is designed to recognize those students or staff who go above and beyond in their day-to-day activities. They are truly exemplary in every way. The winners will receive a limestone plaque as well as a gift certificate from our local businesses, and our sponsors this year are the Paisley Pear, Handyman for Hire, and Tiger Burgers. So our Best of the Best student for this month is Natalia, and I don't want to butcher your last name, honey. You want to say it for me?
Figueroa.
Awesome. It even sounds better from you. Natalia was nominated by Sue Ellen Stenger and Linda Mayer. Would you guys like to come up and say something on her behalf?
So Natalia and her family were displaced by the hurricane in Puerto Rico last year. And so if you think about that, she literally lost a lot of things. Friendships, home, belongings. And so she came here naturally with her native speaking language being Spanish. If I had two words to describe Natalia, it would be resiliency and perseverance. I emailed out the nomination that I sent in to her teachers from last year and her this year's teachers. One of her teachers from last year said, "I never knew the circumstances surrounding Natalia's transfer to Hayes High School. I just knew she had an incredible intellect and work ethic." One of her teachers this year said, "I absolutely love having her in class. Her effort is worth $1 million.
There's a lot I could add, but I just want to ask you all a question. Si me quieren entender, pero es poquito difícil porque no hablan el idioma, pero realmente quieren hablar, entonces pueden entender lo que ha logrado Natalia.
See.
If you found it a little bit difficult to understand what I was saying, then you understand what Natalia has been going through for the past year, and she has done it exceptionally well with a cumulative grade point average of 3.9 in content classes in her second language, and we are sure proud of her.
All right, thank you, Natalia, and thank you to all of the faculty that welcomed her. That's great. Next, we have our staff member, who is Candace Sage, and she was nominated by Lacey, Kaden Connor, and Chloe Haas.
I'm not very good at thinking off the top of my head, so I wrote this down, and my kids all kind of ditched me at the last minute. They were supposed to talk too, so I am going to do all the talking tonight. Mrs. Sage has taught all 3 of my children. The youngest is in her class right now. She goes above and beyond the call of duty for all of her students in her classroom. Every year, she is implementing new ideas and learning opportunities to her students. This year, at the beginning of the year, with the student parent meeting, she told us that she was adding monthly ag lessons, which is something we are excited about because we live on a farm. With my older 2, I had the opportunity to volunteer in her classroom and was able to witness her amazing teaching techniques as I helped her out doing different things. She does so many other things like taking students to Via Christi to interact with the residents. Both of my older 2 had the same resident, and even today they will still talk about him and his stories. They had an awesome bond, and that is something that is an awesome skill to learn, how to interact with people that are older than you are. Along with schoolwork, she teaches them life lessons and rewards their hard work and dedication with fun Friday activities. My oldest son had an assignment in his last weeks of elementary school, and it was to write a letter to the teacher that made the biggest impact on him. Without a doubt, it was no surprise to me when he told me that he wrote his letter to Mrs. Sage. We are extremely blessed to have met her, and I am so blessed that my kids got to have her as a teacher. She has left a lifelong imprint on our family's lives. Her dedication is top-notch, and I believe without a doubt she is an awesome recipient for this award.
Thank you to our winners and our nominating team, and also to our sponsors. Great way to start the meeting out. Next, we'll move on to communications from other organizations, and this is to include the USD 489 partnership with the Hayes Public Library. Looks like we have maybe some librarians here to speak this evening.
Good evening. I'm Lynette Armstrong, and I'm the librarian at Wilson Elementary School, at Hayes Middle School, and at Hayes High School. And the other 2 members of our library department, Sue Pallister, she is our librarian at Roosevelt Elementary and Lincoln Elementary, and Christy O'Borney is our halftime librarian at O'Laughlin. She's also a halftime teacher at O'Laughlin. And we wanted to take a few minutes of the school board's time to publicly thank the Hayes Public Library for all the things that they've done to support not just our library department, but to support the teachers in our school and the students in our school. And to represent Hayes Public Library is Vera Elwood. I'll let her speak in a minute, but first I want to thank them for all the things they've done. A couple years ago when we first started our reading workshop program, we found really quickly that we needed a lot more books to support the teachers and the students, and Hayes Public Library jumped in without any hesitation, checking out books to our schools in numerous volumes, and did it willingly, searched for whatever books the teachers needed. They were awesome. They've also volunteered to come into our different schools and have taught lessons in the classroom and in the libraries for our teachers. Recently, they've been coming into the schools to help set kids up with a Hayes Public Library card so that they could access some of the apps that are available through Hayes Public Library. So now all of our students will be able to download ebooks through the Libby app and Hoopla. There's so many apps on Hayes Public Library's website that our kids can now have access to because of all the work that the Hayes Public Library has done. They send in their staff to our schools to support us. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be having Teen Read Week at the middle school and at the high school, and we've arranged to have members of Hayes Public Library come into the middle school for 3 days in a row. And then the following week, they'll be up at the high school for 3 days in a row. So they've made huge time commitments. They've made huge commitments to their books that they have, making them available to all of us. So we wanted to make sure to publicly thank them for everything they've done to support us. We just had a meeting a couple weeks ago where they've once again stepped up what they're able to do for us with some really wonderful new ideas of things they can do to help us. So I'm going to let Vera tell you a little bit about some of the things that they've got planned for our future as well.
Thank you so much, Lynette. Like she said, my name is Vera Elwood. I'm the young adult librarian at the Hayes Public Library, which means I work with the middle schoolers and high schoolers right after they get their out-of-school craziness every day. And I'm also the point person for this new partnership with USD 489. Our number one goal at the Hayes Public Library has always been to get more books and more resources into the hands of more people, but particularly the kids and the students that we know need it most. And so we incredibly value working with the schools and being able to work with USD 489 to reach out to those kids who aren't always able to come into our library for a lot of different reasons. We've had a really long history of working with USD 489. We've built our relationship pretty gradually. Like Lynette said, we started really with that reading workshop and seeing how many books we could get into the hands of teachers so that their kids would have books for the assignments that they needed. At the middle school and the high school, we coordinate with specific teachers where they will actually send me their assignment rubric for their different book reports that they have coming up. I'll compile a list of books that meet their assignment guidelines, and then I'll come meet with their students in groups and one-on-one to make sure they're getting exactly the book that's actually going to interest them for this book report so they can develop that love of reading. We've done rotating book displays at the school. We've done the library card drives that Lynette mentioned. At the middle school, we actually already have 650 kids signed up so that in a week we'll be giving them all library cards. It helps that we're auctioning off a tablet as a part of that, but still that's 650 kids that we are going to make sure have some sort of library card and access to our materials. But we knew that we needed to expand that partnership. We see all the time, we see every day the hard work that these ladies put into making sure that their kids and their students have the resources that they need. And we also know that there isn't always room in the budget for the items that they might want to get into their kids' hands. And so we are stepping up to offer a part of our budget specifically to develop a collection at each school in USD 489. We are setting aside a part of our budget for every single school in the district where the librarians for your district will have total control over the items that are purchased through that. Those items will live entirely at the school libraries. They will not spend any time in our library unless the librarians decide they no longer need them or have room for them, in which case they'll come back to us. But the point of this was to empower and put that ability into the hands of the staff that you have already determined to be so capable to make sure that they have the resources they need to serve their students. We are incredibly excited. We already have one order in because they are so excited as well, and we cannot wait to see the ways that this partnership continues to develop. We're also looking towards the future in ways that we can make this partnership grow even more. And one project that I know we are about to start some fundraising for is to get a book vending machine at Hayes High School. So it would be a vending machine where students are able to browse and check out items from our library at the Hayes High School. It would look new and high tech, and it's incredibly awesome. And so we're starting to raise funds for that so we can get as many of our materials at the libraries that kids are already at as possible. This partnership is so exciting to us for so many reasons, but it would absolutely not be the partnership that it is today without the help of all of the library staff. So I want to make sure I personally thank Lynette Armstrong, Sue Pallister, Christy O'Borney, and of course the library secretaries that do a lot of the day-to-day activities, Erin Holder, Karen Staub, Tony Lormeyer, and Joanne Wassinger. This partnership has really grown into what it has because they care so much for the kids that they are working with every day, and they are constantly reaching out to us with new and exciting ways that we can help serve their students as well. I also want to thank our director, Brandon Hines. Without his passion and his support behind this partnership would not be what it is today. Thank you so much for giving us some time to talk to you and for allowing us this opportunity to serve your students even more.
May I say, just before they leave, my pleasure of being part of this a couple years ago. It was 2 years ago, we had some meetings at the library to start this. And yes, what has happened in a couple years, it's wonderful to be able from one side to end up giving all the thanks. But it's also it's great to end up working with brilliant people, because the brilliancy of this is a matter of, you should have that collaboration. Any community should have that kind of collaboration between their library and the school's libraries. It's just odd how to get to a point where individuals can understand we're on the same page. You know, it's the same book we're working from. We're really trying to do the same thing. It's just a matter of working through the kind of the difficulty of the finance piece and the time and get through that kind of mess to realize this really is not that hard. And in the long run, who's going to benefit? It's going to be the children. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. All right, moving on now to school spotlights.
We have a couple to end up sharing. One was for the FFA students. They ended up competing at the home site land competition. Really did a wonderful job. There was 6 students that placed in the top 20. Zoe Buffington had 2nd, Jordan Hunsicker had 3rd, Colton Viner had 4th, Alex Miller 10th, Tanner Hazelhorse 17th, and Quentin Rupp had 20th. There was about 80 students who competed in the competition, and the students also competed in the national qualifying competition on Wednesday, September 19th, and successfully qualified for the National Land and Home Site Career Developmental Event in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma in early May. The students are taught by Kurt Viner. So they're starting off the year very well. The other is we had middle school leadership class students. They participated in training. The training was provided by Joe Coles earlier this month. We had Otis Bison and La Crosse. We had students from those two communities that also participated. The training provided students with information about having a positive growth mindset, being accountable, and seeing the importance of positive choices and leadership skills. There will be 2 more sessions that the students will be participating in, and we have the leadership team facilitators of the counselors, Dina Clark and Donna Lovers. So very pleased to end up having those 2 spotlights.
Great. Next is the report of the superintendent.
I have 2 items I wanted to share. It was really, the other item, it's fantastic to see the cooperation. We end up having this library presentation, but then the other item that I really want to press is the cooperation we end up getting from police and fire department when we're trying to work through these crisis drills. We've had several already this year in trying to prepare this, and their willingness and desire to be helpful during that time. When we end up going off-site for some of our drills, which we don't do often, probably every building is going to do an off-site drill just once, maybe twice a year, but for them to be helpful and participate in that, it's just, it's great working with our like I said, the fire department, the police department in trying to do this. The other item is last week was able to attend a session in Salina. Had our education commissioner there, Randy Watson and Brad Neuenschwander, and John Heim was there for KSB, and they all ended up talking. The one thing that I caught, which I wanted to share with board members, which was a little bit different. I know that they've really pressed the issue of preschool, of trying to prepare for They want students as ready for K-12 education as possible. And only recently have we seen the money that's going to be funded for full-day kindergarten. I mean, that's been dangling there for years and years, and so that's finally something. But for preschool, they talked about the funding. They talked about 4-year-old at risk at this time. That's monies that is available for students that end up identified by particular characteristics. Usually they're at-risk children who are 4 years old, and we do have a number of children who we're able to provide that for within our preschool programming. What they had really pressed was their work the last year, last couple years, and then what's upcoming is their intention of trying to end up making more and more available offerings there. So even for our own programming, you know, if we end up having around 40 children that's tied to that funding, then it's for them to end up saying they're trying to end up having the funds to make that even more so for this community and all communities. The challenge of that in the conversation was sometimes identifying those families, because we believe they're there. It's a matter of trying to identify them, because there are families that just greatly isolated, sometimes are in a position where they don't know really what is available to them. Perhaps they're scared until they just have to have their children in school where it's mandatory they have to go. Those are all items that we need to work through in the next few years and try to have as many children as possible in our preschool. But it was very nice to hear that stated. It may have been stated a bit more on the side in the past, but this was really quite upfront. They really made this very clear. This is an intention that they're trying to end up getting. And it's odd because we have been all about K-12. We know that there's many communities that have the preschool programming, but it was very nice, the reassurances there that they understand how very important it is of trying to have as much provisions for children who are 3-year-old, 4-year-old. Parents as Teacher, which that program is even younger, of birth to even up to 4-year-old, 5-year-old at this time. And we do have that program still in our community. So I wanted to share that because I think it may end up being more significant in the next couple years as we try to work with that and develop it more in this community.
All right, thanks, John. I guess you're up next for the financial report, too.
Yeah, financial report, I know early in the year you looked through that, and any questions you have, I'll sure dig into it and try to find any answers and get that to you as soon as possible. I don't think it's nearly as, there's really not points of issue that I was able to go through and try to find for you, but if you found something that you had question of, please ask or send me a note later.
Does anybody have any questions for John at this point? Okay. If not, we'll move on to the next thing. It's approval of the consent agenda to include the board budget hearing meeting minutes from August 20th, 2018, board meeting minutes September 10th, 2018, the special board meeting minutes from September 17th, 2018, approval of bills in the amount of $415,423.09, personnel transactions, approval of surplus items and financial reports, including the clerk's report and investment report.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Adams, second by Board Member Bickle. Is there any items for discussion at this point? Not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Nay. Okay. Passes, the motion passes 6-1. All right. Next, moving on to old business. We'll move on to goal setting.
Goal setting, there are 3 goals. At our last meeting, really identified the 3 goals we were going to work from. I was not able to really have a discussion. We haven't had that meeting with all of the administrators in the district. That'll be coming up. But was able to get some other ideas that I added in and underlined those as far as not necessarily being board members' objectives, but added them to the financial. I think there's 3 of them there, and also 2 that was tied to the prepare the district for the future. So at this point, I would end up asking for any discussion whatsoever with these 3 goals, and then there's 5 objectives for the first, 6 for the second, and 6 for the third as well. So if there was any discussions on that, it can be, as I said, it is a working document. It's a living document. It should not be something that's just set for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We can make changes to it. We just are trying to have something that is as solid at the front end as we can have, and start working this year with this particular updated set of goals.
Yeah, one of them I was looking at, it's an underlined item in the, under the design a stable financial structure and organize financial planning meetings with all directors and administrators to outline needs. I guess maybe elaborate a bit more on what's the intent there, what exactly you mean.
Well, I think that was a matter of sometimes there's planning meetings that go on, but we don't have everybody that probably should be in those discussions be there to have full understanding. And at a later time, there can be questions or misunderstandings because of that. So trying to develop these meetings to be more formal and have as many. That would be sometimes the director of transportation, the director of nutrition, some of those particular areas could be left out in discussions when they probably shouldn't be, so they have a better understanding of where money is needed, where there's being requests for it.
And I guess part of that may go back to a conversation that we had that Board Member Schwartz brought up quite a bit ago, is about planning for multiple years out. Is that part of that? I guess that would be part of what I would look at in the financial planning meeting is
Right.
the 1 year, 2, 3, 5 years out in budgeting and planning. So that's what I thought you were talking about, but apparently that wasn't quite what you. But that would be of interest to try to bring that aspect in for multi-year planning.
Right. Well, part of this ends up being in in most of our areas, there's been that attempts the last year, number of years of creating those cycles in different areas of creating purchasing for vehicles, purchasing technology, purchasing even in nutrition. That's something that is not necessarily shared on a regular basis, but Jessica tries to arrange the machines that she has, like dishwashers, the systems that exist, and she has the ones that are not working as well, and she ends up having that identified as to which ones, when she feels there's money, which ones need switched out as soon as possible. So I am saying I believe that we're working towards that, but it needs to be polished.
Okay. And I guess I was looking at another underlined item, develop a plan to prepare a district for the future. And the last one identified the most needed jobs in the regions, modify our CTE program pathways. I think that's, I like that addition.
Yeah, there was one item that really did catch us. In this area, what are some of the most important, what are the most needed jobs? And in some discussions, not one, there's been several, of identifying what are the jobs in this area that we really have the greatest needs for. Well, when we identified those for this area, we find out that sometimes we don't have our CTE programming really linking to them. One could be we have a CTE program that's for education, as well to be teachers. And we have not fleshed that out to end up having that program. And the question would be why? If we know that that's an area that there's need for jobs, it makes sense to maybe put in, if there's personnel, if there's some money, if there's whatever's needed to try to create that program for there at the high school, we need to try to do that.
Well, and particularly I like that, but I don't, it's probably more in the action step phase that I'd be interested in, but looking at institutions of post-secondary education and what CT pathways are transferable to some initial credit. I know Fort Hays has the tech studies one and also an education pathway that's being activated. So again, that's probably more of the action step, but I think that is a consideration as we plan not just for the district's future, but our students' future.
Does anyone else have any items for discussion that they want to talk about with the board goals? So at this point, are you,
I would move ahead with this.
Okay.
And yeah, I will end up taking this to the administrators as a whole, at our next meeting. If there are other ideas that come from that, certainly that would be shared with you, but we would go ahead and start working at making sure these new goals are out there for public to be aware of and make changes with
so
it.
kind of like what you did with our last set?
Yes.
Make sure that they're really,
Yes.
okay?
And I do have one more question
Sure.
related to that. With the goals, just help me get the sense of the timeline. Is you'll share it, your team, your executive leadership team, come back with whatever may be changed. At what point will you begin putting the action steps to those? To come forward to the board and say,
Right.
here's our intended action.
The
what
timelines, yeah.
And we'll do that.
I would say that would be right afterwards, so it's be probably late October.
Late October. All right. Thanks.
Anyone else?
I do kind of have one thing, but I'm not sure if we're at the wordsmithing stage. But the first one that says design a stable financial structure, I feel like that insinuates that we currently don't have a stable financial structure. Just whenever I read that, so I don't know if it would be better to reword that in a way where it's maintained a stable financial structure.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else felt that way when they read it.
And they may have. I never took that side of it from the standpoint of a design for a stable financial structure is ongoing. If you don't make changes year after year with it, then it's not stable. I mean, so that's what I was thinking, is the design is again a constant check and make changes that are needed to it. But I follow what you're saying. That's
Probably.
maintain. I think the reason is maintain's kind of a weak word for a goal. You know, maintain is just, you're okay, just maintain it. And that's, I think, may be why that wasn't used. If that's all we want to do is just maintain.
Yeah, pull the last group responsible. It's right there. So it was the previous board's fault. Oh wait, no.
Okay. We'll continue on then.
Okay. Anybody have anything else on this? Okay. Next, we'll move on to new business, and Russ will present on the transportation purchase for the 18-19 school year.
Good evening. Each year about this time, I come to the board to discuss our upgrading our school fleet of vehicles. Several years ago, at the board's request, we put together a 5-year purchasing plan, and that's what basis we've been working off of. And we've had a budget of like $304,000 that we've used in the last several years. Several attachments with this. Yeah, that'd be the first one, Sean. This here is talks about all the buses that we have. At the left, it talks about the retirement year. We can use in the state of Kansas school bus for a max of 25 years. So that's why we have a max of 25 years there. We don't get the use of 25 years out of buses. They just wear out before that time frame. So But as far as the longest that we can have that is 25 years. And just going across the spreadsheet, this tells what type of bus it is, the capacity of children, years manufactured, our bus number, and then the current mileage of that particular bus, the start of school this year. So any questions on that page?
These are all the buses we have right now.
Yes, these are the 21 buses that we have right now, yes.
How many bus routes are we running now?
We are running 8 bus routes for the regular students, and we have 3 special needs routes, and then we have 2 Head Start routes that we run.
So 12 or 13?
Well, yeah, basically the 8 plus 3, and then the 2 Head Start, yes.
And then have we looked at, and I know that's not really what you're here to talk about, but since you're here, I wanted to ask, but as far as the routes, I think that was about 5 years ago. I was trying to figure out today when that was, but it was 4 or 5 years ago, it seems like. But we looked at that time about routes and numbers, and I know at that point there was some more we could do, but we didn't, and we said, well, at some point in the future we can look at that again, and just curious if we're at that point in the future or where we stand number. I mean, how many kids are we busing that are inside the 2.5 or aren't required to be bused?
Yeah, we went to that 2.5 mile several years ago. About 4 years ago, we did that, and that did discount a lot of students that ride the bus because now we're only transporting the ones who live over 2.5 miles. We did shut down 4 routes at that time, which was 4 drivers, and then we also got rid of 3 substitute drivers at that time. So we did downsize our fleet a lot. We downsized our personnel a lot. Reviewing the bus routes is a continuing thing. We get calls daily on, okay, we're going to need to ride the bus now, or sports have changed, so now they want to ride the bus, or they don't ride the bus. So it's a continuing change of students riding or not riding, and changes our routes. Most of that, the major changes at the beginning of each year, because we start completely brand new at the beginning of each year. When everyone enrolls, we go through a process, make sure they're over the 2.5 miles, and then we set across, we have a computer program that helps us set, what's the best route to run, and then we kind of,
We haven't, just because I think some of that sounds like what we had before, and I think maybe you cleared that up, but before we had it where people would add on, and then we just start creating routes or changing routes based on that, but we're making sure that they qualify before
Yeah, with our computer program, it gets down to the feet, how far they are from their school to their house. And of course, we're audited on that. When the school gets audited, we get audited. That's part of the audit, the audited part of that. So, yeah, it's only right if they're over 2.5 miles. Now, we have a situation with the principals, the counselors. I've worked with John on a few cases, but, majority of everybody is over the 2.5 mile. Now, special needs is a different situation, or if they have an IEP program, that changes that situation. So, homeless, that's a different situation also. So,
do you know about how many that we have that aren't 2.5 miles?
Very, very, very few. A handful.
Yeah, and the 2.5 also, just so everybody knows, that would be for, our elementaries, middle school, high school, Holy Family, TMP, all of them are included in that measurement of that 2.5 miles. So
Yeah, we do transport Holy Family and TMP students. They have to be over their 2.5 mile also. So we do transport them, and that's part of a state statute that we do that. So as long as we have room on the bus, so. And that we get no funding for that either.
But they're the same 2.5 mile rule applies
Yes.
to them as well, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Just to clarify, TMP and Holy Family, that's just part of our operational costs. There's no charge to those schools?
Yeah, we do not receive any funding for transporting those students, but it's a state statute that we do have to transport them.
So out of our operating budget, the district covers the cost of that for
Correct.
the Holy Family, TMP. All right.
And we're not talking hundreds of kids, it's probably that 20, 30 range should be my guess. So, and, we do have room for them on the buses too, so.
Good shared resource for the community.
So any other questions on the busing side, on the buses? The next slide is a lot of the cars, Suburbans that we have. That top grouping is mainly Suburbans. That's mainly what we use out of town. I say out of town, tennis, golf, use those for athletic events. Teachers use them for in-service. And then the next grouping down is, we call it work studies. It's a few that we just keep in town only, and that's traveling, carrying students from school to school, special needs students to do a work study at a place of business. We return them back. The next grouping is 3 cars that we have that we use for, if we don't need a big Suburban, just have 1 or 2 people go, and we send them in a car. And the last 2 is just, we have a vehicle we run the inter-school mail around, and the high school has a car they keep out there to go to all their sporting events and in-services. So that's the main group that we keep track of at our place. There are 16 other vehicles that are not on that list. Those are maintenance vehicles, early childhood connection vehicles, and nutrition. So we still, that's about 36 vehicles that, like our mechanic, he does all the service work on them, repair work on them and stuff. So there's 16 other vehicles that we take care of that's not on that particular list, so.
On the
Yes.
buses, one of the questions, sorry. There's 19, I think I counted, is that right?
I think 21 buses or something, 20 buses, yeah.
And I'm just curious, if we have that many routes, do we need 21?
Well, at the bottom of that list, there's 5 buses that are activity buses. So those are activity buses that are mainly just for activities. And then I do have 2, I have 1 backup special needs bus for in case one breaks down. We've got a wheelchair capability of transporting. And then I have 2 route buses that are spares. All the other buses are being used in some fashion. So we're not hanging on to a whole bunch of buses. They're sitting there. And our spare buses, Lance was there the other day, we had a bus breakdown. And I had to hop in the bus and run up and take a field trip, So, if we don't have a spare bus, then that trip gets canceled or something. So we have to always keep a couple spares around for that purpose.
And are the activity buses, are they running at times in which the route buses are?
If I have a route bus that it's down and we do not have an activity, we will use an activity bus as a route bus. There's 1 bus that we cannot do that. That's the white one, because it does not have a stop sign or the 8-way, so we cannot use that on a route.
Sorry. I guess since you're on the vehicles, I have the same question about those. Just the number of, I think I counted 15 Suburbans, and the others, I think 13 Suburbans and 2 others. On those, are those used?
Tomorrow, I probably won't have hardly any of them in the lot, for example.
What are they being used for?
Well, like in-service, we've got 6, 7 vehicles going out tomorrow for in-service for teachers. And then we have golf out, we have tennis out, and then we use some of them to run kids around town too instead of using a big school bus, we can get them into a Suburban to run it cheaper. We use Suburbans for that too, so.
It is odd. I know you look at the number here, but I'll share with you that I don't know the data of how much use there is, but I know that you're supposed to end up putting in a request for vehicles if you're taking a trip 3 days in advance.
Yes.
And there's been a couple times I have neglected or forgot to do that. And I would say several times in just the 2 years, I have driven my vehicle because there's not a vehicle available. So
Every day, are they all out? No, but there are days, he says, that we will have to turn somebody down, and then they'll have to drive their own vehicle and get reimbursed from the district.
I mean, and I guess Suburbans, when you look at what the proposed purchases coming up, they're not double, but they're significantly more than a car. And I guess the question would be could we get by with a few fewer Suburbans and more cars, or are they, is it times that the Suburbans are all out because we need the 9 passengers?
Like I said, we don't bus tennis and we don't bus golf, for example. Sometimes, volleyball on a Saturday, like last Saturday, I had 6 or 5 trips out of town. I was out of buses and out of drivers. And high school volleyball was just taking varsity. So they could take 2 Suburbans and get by without us having to send a bus for 12 kids. So, we have Scholars Bowl. They take Suburban sometimes. Middle school has a Scholars Bowl. The high school has Scholars. Now we have chess that's now started up this year. So Sometimes if we get them into a Suburban, we'll do that instead of a busing, to save a driver or to save the expense of a bus versus Suburban. So there's a lot of times we use a lot of Suburbans in a lot of different variety of ways. And typically right now, the 3 cars we have, they seem to be enough to keep up for what we have. So.
Do you have a total for the vehicles, not the buses, but for the vehicles of everything that was driven last year?
That we,
Yeah, the miles drove last year, have you totaled that?
I don't have a total off the top of my head of the total miles we've driven. No, I sure don't. Now, on the car side, it tells you how many miles. I did not put that on the bus side, but in the cars, it says how many miles we drove last year. That part's on there.
Yeah, I was looking for the total of all of them together.
But no, total of everything, no, I do not have that on. If no other questions, the next slide is the 5-year plan that we've put together. The top part's kind of getting cars, Suburbans, and then on the bottom side, it's looking at either route buses or activity buses, getting those rotated out. So kind of gives us a 5-year plan of what we're looking at. So, and it's been, when we set it together several years ago, it's been a nice tool to have to help plan ahead. And so I think it's been a great tool for us to use. And then on the last screen, what we're looking for, you see the top there, it says a gas route bus. That's a little different than what I've asked in the past. With diesel, for people that have bought newer diesel, their emissions, the government's put a bunch of emissions on these. If you used to see the black smoke piling out of diesels, they're getting away from that to clean up the environment. One is these emission controls, and it's really added the cost to vehicles. And several in the state and across the nation, these emission programs are creating a lot of money, repairs. And so a few years ago, some of the manufacturers started building bigger gas engines to put into these route buses to run on routes or short distant trips. And I've talked to several in the state of Kansas been using them, and they're loving them. There's a lot of difference between a gas and a diesel. For one, they're a lot cheaper in price. Of course, they're a lot quieter. The fuel price is cheaper. For example, when we service our buses, a gas engine takes 7 quarts of oil, a diesel takes 17 quarts of oil. So a lot of difference just on maintenance. And then luckily haven't had no repairs ourselves yet on the emissions, but like I said, other people have had, and we're talking thousands of dollars sometimes when they go down. So across the nation, people are looking at different ways to get away from this emission control, and this is one way of doing it. So for a route bus this year, I'm looking at going for a gas. And I'm looking for you guys to permission for Kansas truck, which is not the lowest bid. It is $478 more, but it has the engine that we're wanting, and everybody I've dealt with has had this Bluebird and this engine, and which is a Ford engine. It's a V10 engine. And Midwest Transit, which is lower bid, has a PSI engine. It's a totally different engine, and people haven't been as satisfied with that. So for the $478 more, in my opinion, it's worth the difference to get the V10 from Bluebird. And then the other bus manufacturer at this point does not make a gas engine. So,
Russ, in your experience with those, I guess my only question with the diesel and the other stuff, usually, you brought up some points, as far as like the amount of oil and stuff like that. But if I'm not mistaken, you also can go a fair amount longer on those before you change oil compared to a gas engine.
You can.
I guess my only question on that is, from a longevity standpoint, do you see any with the gas engine versus the diesel? Because I know a lot of places, like delivery places, stuff like that, that use diesel just for that reason.
And diesels, from what research I've done and talking to mechanics, they're just not what they used to be because of all this new emission system that has to go on them. And we're having trouble more with the emissions than we are with the actual diesel engine itself. So it's the emissions that are going on it that are creating a lot of issues.
Is that a mechanic issue that that they have to get certified in new techniques, or is it that there are more instances of repairs?
On the emissions?
Yes.
From what we're hearing, there's a lot of they're having issues with the emissions, and the people that are having issues, they're talking anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 every time some of the systems go down. So it's a great expense to get them fixed.
How, I mean, that concerns me, but you mentioned that diesel, I own a diesel, and one of the reasons I do is if you're pulling or drive, which a bus is pulling all the time, is that, yes, it costs more to the tune of about 20, 30 cents, but, you know, a gas engine will get about 5 miles to the gallon, whereas the diesel will get 10 to 12. So you're using, I mean, that argument goes out the window when you're getting twice the gas mileage for 20 or 30 cents more.
The two people I dealt with in Dodge City and the other one's in Topeka, they're getting 6 to 7 miles a gallon on these gas engines. And where we're using it, it's start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, whereas the gas or diesel. So it's not like we're on the road driving to Salina, Liberal and stuff. We would not have that particular bus, gas bus, doing that type of driving. It's mainly for running in towns or short
But those will be
trips.
less then, won't they? I mean, if they're getting 6 to 7 on the highway, you're gonna get,
No, in town and stuff, they said, because they're just using them like we would use them
but a diesel's
for
gonna get,
inter-town route.
in town, you're gonna probably get, you might get better if you're not pulling, right? I mean, one of the draws on a diesel, like a bus, is the wind force, to where in town, you're not gonna be having that problem as much.
Right.
I just have the concern that if we go that direction and we find out in 2 or 3 years that, you know, that's not a good investment, we've wasted all that money. The other thing is, what's the resale value of that gas bus versus the diesel? Because a gas engine, 100, 200,000 miles, where a diesel, I mean, some of those will drive 1,000,000 miles or more.
But for busing purposes, you're not getting that no more. The busing, everybody's getting rid of the buses when they get to that 10 years and less than 200,000 miles. Now, we have some activity buses that are getting up there in the mileage, but, you know, we are having issues, you know, that we always have issues on any vehicle, you know, but this is success that other districts have had, and I thought it's a good chance to, you know, once we have a couple buses go down, if that's anywhere to $5,000 to $10,000 talking, and our budget's shot and we're done for the year for, you know, for repair business. So that's just something that we're just trying to look forward ahead to see what we could do, what are other people doing in the state and in the nation. Some are going to propane, some are going to natural gas to get away from the diesel part too. So but that's just really not an option for us at this point.
Why not?
Natural gas is almost impossible, you know, and we could get to Salina, but then we'd have to refill with propane or natural gas and having places available.
Doesn't Midwest Energy have a filling station?
They have a real slow, last I knew, a real slow type process of filling. So that would take hours and hours to get it filled. So some have a fast system and then there's a slower system, so.
Just had a couple other questions on the numbers there. And maybe I'm looking at something wrong, but if I look up top in the previous deal, it shows, you know, our budget is $250,000 for the route or the activity and route bus and $100,000 for the deal. This here we show $304,000 is the budget. And the other one, am I looking at something wrong? Or?
Yeah, just what Tracy has always put together. We started with the 304,000. It's always been there. These are just, if you look at the two Suburbans, I have, for example, in the 2021, 2022 year, I have 100,000. Suburbans right now, a little under 39,000 apiece. So not knowing what's going to happen, you know, in 4 or 5 more years, if that price can continue to go. So it gives us a little bit of cushion there, you might say, not knowing what the future is going to be, especially with the steel tariffs and everything. For the buses I have at the end of October, if I get them in, the price is going up November 1st.
So right now we're about 59,000 below the budget or the budgeted.
No, well,
right?
if we go up this, we're just $12,000 under budget.
Okay, that's why I was asking on the other one, because like I said, the other shows it's 350, so, okay. Thank you.
Any more questions on the gas side? Okay, I'll go on down to the yellow activity bus. I did this a couple of years ago. When I say yellow activity bus, it's a yellow school bus that we can run on routes and everything, but we dress it up a little bit for activity use. And when I say that, we have a rooftop air conditioner. We put luggage racks on the inside of the bus for more storage for their backpacks and gear that are taken to their meets. And then just try to dress it up a little bit more. We still have bench seats in this bus, and the reason for that, I can hold up to 54 at 2 to a seat. We have the white activity bus has got more, I might want to say, airlines type seats, but the max I can haul is 42 in that bus. So there's a lot of times we transport more than 42. If I do that, then I can't use that bus. So right now I have one bus that's activity bus. It's a white one. Everything else I use is yellow. I try to dress it up for the kids, you know, to hold more storage and stuff. And then we use it back up as a route bus at that time too, so if we need it. So, and I was looking at Kansas Truck for that one, which is the low bid. It's also a Bluebird. Bluebird is Kansas Truck, which is out of Wichita. So it's kind of convenient. You know, if we need to do anything, we can get it down there, so.
And what will happen with the one that you're retiring then? I know we've talked about it before, like you've sold them on Purple Wave or was...
Yeah, after the buses take anywhere 6-7 months once we order them till they come in, so it's right towards the end of school, April, May, when we typically get them. And then we'll rotate buses out, you know, usually sell a couple. If we get 2, I'll try to sell 2 at that time to keep our fleet at the same number.
And what is your anticipated, like, sale cost on those, or what have you got?
Oh, boy. Usually we get less than 10,000 for a bus, usually. Because now when I started this, you know, we had a lot of older buses and we're getting the process of starting to get several of those out of the system, but they were really bad shape, old buses that just didn't bring much on Purple Wave. So but each year we're getting, you know, a little bit better, you know. So the resale isn't a whole lot on a school bus.
And is part of that just because there's so many out there?
That and just uncertainty of what the school bus is. On Purple Wave, in our last ones, we sold people in Michigan and Mississippi, you know, so it's not just a Kansas, it's all over the nation. And we get very good people. It's an auction type system. They're on there for a month. But, you know, just there is a lot of schools that are selling school buses across the United States, and there's a lot out there to pick from, so.
I know one time we were discussing, I don't remember when it was, we were discussing seatbelts and whatnot in buses. Have laws changed or anything on that?
Nationally, no, that has not changed yet. There's a lot of talk about seatbelts. Buses are made for not wearing seatbelts. And all of our new buses, the seats are very tall and they're very padded. And they say it's kind of like being an airbag system. You know, when your bus driver's looking in the back on these new buses, you can't even see the kids' heads because the seats are so tall. And they do that for if there's a front or rear crash, they will hit the seat in front of them. So, but at this point, there is not a law on that, but they are talking about a lot of it. And to add seat belts to a bus, $10,000 to $12,000 extra to put seat belts on a bus, and they have to be a 3-point type. Can't just be a lap belt; it has to be a 3-point system.
Are we doing that on most of the buses, or?
These buses are not. I have an activity bus. Several years ago, we ordered that way. A lot of our special needs buses, we will put seat belts on them, you know. But for our regular route buses, we have not done that in the past.
And the poor bus driver having to make sure that the kids will have their seatbelts on. I have a hard enough time with 4 in my car.
And for the buses that have seat belts in them, it's not law that they have to wear them just because they're there. You know, if it wanted to be a school policy, if you guys pass that, and then they would, you know, but that's a school policy at this point in time. And then the other thing is looking at a Suburban and another car to purchase. So for a total of $291,790.25. And then with that, we're a little over $12,000 under budget with that. So gas bus, an activity bus, Suburban, and a car.
With the Suburban and the car, part of this 5-year plan, is it to grow the fleet, or are you trying to just maintain the 20?
Right now, we're just maintaining the same number. So in the spring, you know, we'll be getting rid of a couple older vehicles.
I really only see one Suburban that has over 200,000 miles on it. So what would you be replacing with the car?
That changes from month to month sometimes, which vehicle, you know, because that we got from now basically towards the end of school before we would get in the process of disposing a vehicle on Purple Wave, and a lot changes in that time frame. But the ones, Some of the newer ones, we rotate, like the high school has 2 Suburbans they use to drive work study students around. So that one of them is probably one that we bring back in and get rid of, so on Purple Wave. And then the car out at the high school is one that we may look at. We've had some issues with it, some mechanical issues, and maybe look at trying to get rid of it this year. At this point, that's what we're looking at this point in time.
So that's a fairly new vehicle, isn't it?
It is 2012. With 73,000 miles. And they put around, looks like 10,000 miles on it last year.
I added up the miles drove last year on the vehicles, and it was about 160,000. So I know if you buy a new car and you put 160,000 on it, you can still use that car for a while. So in my mind, that means that we're growing the fleet by buying 2 vehicles when in the last year we barely even used up one. If that makes any sense, that kind of logic. So it doesn't seem like we're driving as much as I thought we were when I look at this.
The only thing I would add to those comments, and when we talk busing too, Friday night, we was in Garden City for football. My driver's clocked out at 2:30 in the morning. We're driving back at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. 2 years ago, I left at 8 o'clock at night and took a bus down to Jetmore because the bus broke down in December. It was below zero. So having reliable vehicles on the road is very important. Where we talk about a lot of teachers in service are driving Suburbans out of district, out of state, and activities or sporting events, having vehicles that hopefully won't break down has been what I heard when I first came. That's what I heard a lot of, is that the vehicles are always breaking down. They break down when they're on the road and stuff. So we came a long ways in that. So that's always back in my mind, the safety of the students, especially in wintertime, being on the road and breaking down. So we've been trying to do everything we can to upgrade the fleet as well as we could for the safety of everybody.
Do we have some type of policy that says when a vehicle hits a certain mileage that we...
Because it varies from, it could have 60,000 miles, but it could be 12, 15 years old, just depending on how it was driven through, its life. We could have a vehicle drives 50,000 miles in a year, which we don't, but I guess it'd be less than that. But so it kind of depends on the upkeep and what troubles we've had with that vehicle. Some vehicles we don't have no issues, and some we have quite a few issues with sometimes. So just depends from vehicle to vehicle or bus to bus.
I think in my time on the board, at least, I don't know what happened before, but Russ has come every year, and he does have a plan, and he's monitoring all those vehicles, and he knows them better than anybody. But I don't know if that wasn't in place before, but it seems like the budget's been fairly consistent. The 3+ years that I've been on it, he's always replacing 1 to 2 vehicles, and it's about $300,000, and he's saving usually below it. So at least it's been consistent since I've been on.
I think what we talked about last time when we did this and we set the plan in place was the Kansas Highway Patrol's used as an example. They replaced their vehicles at 50,000 miles. When a trooper's vehicle, I think it's still at 50, the last I knew it was, but when it hit like over 40, they got limited on miles and maybe had it taken away and a replacement car. And they had a program in place where they sell them to local law enforcement, and they had determined that at that mileage, those vehicles got the maximum dollars back. And so we talked about that as finding that sweet spot of trading in a vehicle and mileage. I don't know that that's ever been done though, but it seems to make sense that one would do that, because if the maximum return on investment is a vehicle with 50 or 80,000, whatever that number is, I don't know. But
You're saying in opposition to like running it clear till we only get $10,000 for it on Purple Wave?
But I'm looking at these. I mean, the highest vehicle, on the top Suburbans is 122,000 miles, which is high, but not like worthless high. And the rest of those, I mean, you got one at 90, and then everything else is 45,000 or below, which could be considered pretty low mileage for a vehicle. You get into that second section, those are older vehicles there, all between 01 and 05, but even those, the mileage is between 58,000 and 231,000. So it just, I think Sophia's got a point that, you know, if you're only putting 58,000 on a vehicle in 17 years, do you need that vehicle? I mean, do we have something that shows how many days out of the school year that we have all the vehicles out?
Not that I know of. I mean, we put everything into a book. When we get requests, it's all into a book, and we keep it that way. Like tomorrow morning, I got 6 or 7 vehicles going out for teacher in service and some others, and almost all of them are out today, so I'm going in at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. I got to service 3 vehicles before they go out at 6 o'clock when the teachers leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, because they're out today. We got to get them serviced, fueled up, so I'm in at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning doing that.
So if we have 6 or 7 tomorrow, are those 6 or 7, does each person get their own vehicle, or how does that work?
Meaning, I guess.
Well, do we have 3 people going to Salina, and if so, do they each take their own vehicle, or do we make them all 3 ride in one?
Oh, well, they carpool, yeah. We don't send one vehicle per person, no. Yeah, they're,
These are teams, our foundation teams are going, so there's like 6 in a.
There's usually more than
There's
one.
that many schools, every building is represented, it's a training. So we usually practice well.
when golf goes, they take 8, you know, and when tennis goes, there you go, and debate, you know, if they take them, you know, it's usually packed full, so.
And when it says, Sophia, on the work study, just know that that means there could be very few miles, but they're probably used every day.
Yeah, they are used every day.
They're everyday use, but it may be, I mean.
They're going from the high school to S&W, you know, take some students down there at McDonald's to work for an hour, and then they take them back, so.
Wait, so let me, you guys are growing the fleet, or are you still trying to keep it at 20 vehicles?
No, when I like purchase a bus or Suburbans, what I've done in the past 5 years I've been here, we sell those same number of vehicles at the end of the school year. So we're not increasing, you know, we're keeping it the same, and we're getting rid of the older ones, which is usually in the spring time when we get everything in.
So even though these work study ones look like we don't put a lot of mileage on, I mean, it sounds like they have a need. I mean, if we took one of those out of the mix, that would be a problem.
If we get rid of Suburbans for that purpose, now we're driving a bus around town for a few students. Is the other option on that side of it. And that's why we use a lot of Suburbans for that purpose, cheaper, so.
Russ, have we considered taking, like, when we retire, that out-of-town Suburban and replacing it, and then when we're, like, for instance, the 05 Suburban that's got 122,000 miles, if we replace, if I don't know if that's the one you're replacing.
No, I would probably do on that second group in the one with the 231,000 miles.
But why wouldn't we replace the 05 up top and take the 05 and replace it with the one that runs in town?
Well, the 05 is going to go down to the work study, and then that 2001 with the old miles will be on Purple Wave. So I rotate my oldest out of
So you are
town
doing
into
that?
the work study, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I keep the newer, better ones for out on the road.
Because if the in-town ones break down, it's not as big a deal.
You know, it shows 4 of these as work studies. 2 of those are at the high school, and that leaves 2 for us at our bus barn. But we do have to use the out-of-town ones too every once in a while because of the need of hauling students around town. So just because it says out-of-town does not mean we're not using it in town also.
Any more questions? Nope. Do you guys want more time to review the Russ's presentation, and then vote on it the next meeting, or are you guys ready to vote this evening?
I'm okay with voting now, but I'll be willing to wait.
Don't we usually do new business? and then
Yeah,
do it
move it on to the next time.
Yeah,
It gets voted on the next
But,
meeting.
Russ, are you available the next meeting too?
Yes.
Okay. That's usually my next question is, can they come back twice?
And you have said in the past, we usually want to do these kind of the first part of the year. I think you kind of alluded to it tonight, the time it takes to get.
I need these approved at least by the next board meeting, because if it goes past that, and then I don't get that pricing, at least on the buses, the bus side for sure. And they're talking about the prices going up quite a bit with with the tariffs, steel tariffs and some of those, and just each year, the price does seem to go up a little bit, so by acting by next meeting, you know, we can still get this current pricing. If not, it will go up quite a bit.
If you guys have questions for Russ before next meeting or need him to bring additional information, be sure to reach out to him.
Yeah, just send me an email or call me.
I just have one other
Sure.
question. On the buses, are we sending out bid specs for those, or are those on the state contract?
All pricing for the buses and for the Suburban car is state pricing. It's a computer program, the prices are right there, so for that, we do not have to go out for bids on them.
Thanks, Russ.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Russ.
Next thing on the agenda is discussion by board members and agenda requests.
Maybe a request, just a update at some point on the Google study that's going on.
Oh, cool study. That's something for you. There was a delay in the Chromebooks. So
Okay.
we are getting those. We don't have those right now. We're setting out that.
Okay.
And add that to one of the upcoming meetings.
Yep, that'd be good. And then any data that's come out of the rollout of the new computers that we put out there.
At the high school.
At the high school in particular.
Anyone else? All right. At this time, I will move that the Board of Education recess into executive session along with the board attorney, assistant superintendent, director of special education to discuss matters relating to employer-employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with the representative or representatives of the public body or agency, according to KSA 75-4319B3, with the open session to resume in this room at, did I say include the superintendent too? You did it, so. Session to resume at 8:05. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Been moved and seconded by Board Member Oborny. All those in favor, aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 7-0.